And welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Journey into Knicks. We're in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Zach Hill, and we are ready to draft. This is, there's tense moments down there, Zach. This is the first magic action that happens during the course here of the entire weekend. And we're going to start with Jeremy Dezani in the draft. We're drafting full block, full Theros block. So we're going to start with Journey into Knicks here. And he's looking at his pack already. Let's see what he has. He's pulled a sigiled starfish to the front of his pile here. This is a new blue common that has really gotten a lot of attention. There's also, though, a Banishing Light in this pack, which is one of the premium removal spells in the format.
And Banishing Light, really one of the only cards I'd consider taking over Sigiled Starfish. You know, Starfish sets up your draws almost the entire game, but Banishing Light just gets rid of anything.
And he does take Banishing Light, a fine start to a draft. Now, Banishing Light is similar to a card, Oblivion Ring, that you may have played with in the past. It's been printed multiple times. It is a little shakier in this format with so much enchantment destruction running around, but you still play it.
You still play it, and while there is a lot of enchantment removal, there's also Constellation, which gives you a benefit for playing your own enchantment. So that's a slight upside Banishing Light might have.
Wow, here's an Eidolon of Blossoms passed to Jeremy Dezani. Now, that's an interesting card that I think people are still trying to get the feel for. It's clearly powerful. You get a 2/2 for 4, and you draw a card when it enters the battlefield, but anytime another enchantment enters the battlefield on your side, you get to draw another card. You can kind of go off with this thing.
And another one of those enchantments is the Banishing Light that he just took. I mean, if you're Dezani, you've got to be very excited to have been passed an Eidolon of Blossoms.
Yeah, I had an interesting situation before with this card where I had a choice of either playing a creature or killing it, and I couldn't decide, is this the kind of creature that you just have to kill, or can you kind of wait around a bit? I decided not to kill it, and I was punished for that. All right, here's the next pack. Things are starting to sort of become clear for Dezani. He's got a double green and a really powerful white card here, but he still can be open. He doesn't have to be green-white at this point. He can sort of dance around if something big comes his way. He's pulled a Ravenous Lucracota to the front of his pile here. Ravenous Lucracota, a very solid 4-drop. It's 2/4 with Vigilance. You can see it on your screen. It's got monstrosity for later in the game. And here's Golden Hide Ox, and he's going to take Golden Hide Ox here. That's interesting.
That is interesting. I think in general, Golden Hide Ox, at least a slightly weaker card than the Lucracata, but it looks like he's going all in, or at least comparatively on that Constellation theme.
Wow, a couple of great cards for him in this third pack. He's got a Fleet Feather Cockatrice pulled to the front, very powerful, but then hiding in the back, Golden Hind. Really one of the premier commons for this set. 2 mana, 2/1 that also ramps. Really good card.
Right. I mean, Voyaging Satyr, one of the premier cards from Triple Theros. Golden Hind is a Voyaging Satyr. Doesn't fix your colors quite as well, but in exchange you get to attack for 2.
Big upside there. And Jeremy wastes no time taking the Golden Hind.
Yeah, and I think the Cockatrice is an amazingly powerful card, but committing into blue and having to either splash that Banishing Light, it's just, at this point, you just want to be a little bit more consistent.
All right, so he's pulled a Font of Fertility and a Nessian Game Warden to the front of his pack. 2 pretty solid green cards. The Game Warden, though, really good at 5 mana.
Really good at 5 mana and just telling you that green is wide open right now. I mean, these are both premier green cards. I think it's hard to go wrong with either pick right here.
I actually think he took the font there, but I couldn't quite see. So we'll try to figure out exactly what he took, but I think he took Font of Fertility.
Well, Font of Fertility, going to allow him to splash if he continues to get these other powerful cards and other colors late, also would allow him to splash the Banishing Light if he needs to. And with Eidolon of Blossoms, the fact that it's an enchantment, tremendously relevant. I think he took another Font of Fertility there.
All right, so he's looking to branch out potentially and enable a pretty easy splash if he wants to. He'd love that Fleet Feather Cockatrice to come back, but it seems unlikely.
I think that's pretty unlikely. Although, I mean, mana acceleration just very good in green in this block in general.
Here's a Revel of the Fallen God, an interesting high drop for a deck. Oh, that's blue-red. Yeah, he's going to take Revel of the Fallen God. You get 4 2/2 red and green Satyr tokens with haste. It's a huge spell when you can resolve it, but it does cost 7 mana.
It costs 7 mana. He has 3 ramp spells in his pile right now, I think, which makes taking a 7 mana spell a little bit more reasonable.
That's right.
And I mean, it is very hard to lose a game if you're actually able to cast Revel of the Fallen God.
Yeah, here's a Market Festival, another ramp spell, but I see Colossal Heroics hiding behind it, a really solid combat trick that he can use. He's going to take Market Festival. Jeremy Dezani is going big. He is going huge. Remember, one thing to keep in mind here as well is that the Banishing Light that he has is very splashable. He could be green-red and just splash the Banishing Light, no problem. Hasn't really seen much else in white anyway.
Market Festival, yet another enchantment that's allowing him to ramp, and I think we've really seen Dezani choose a deliberate direction after that.
I think so too. Now, the next card he has pulled up is Starfall, but he's kind of peeking at Humbler of Mortals. He decides to take the Starfall, moving a little further into the green-red here.
Right, and with all of that ramp, he's actually able to cast Starfall pretty much on parity with whatever the creature he wants to kill is.
All right, he takes a Humbler of Mortals out of the next pack, though. That's a nice 6-drop. It's a 5/5. He gives his whole team Trample with Constellation. Jeremy Dezani is drafting a Constellation deck in many ways here. He's already got 3 Constellation cards.
Yeah,
Couldn't quite see what he took there.
I think it's yet another Humbler of Mortals. Okay. And that trample ability really relevant in a format with a bunch of cards like Nessian Asp, like a Luke Rakota, if he can get another one. I mean, the trample tremendously relevant.
I couldn't see that card either.
Okay.
We brought up Countermand. Let's just assume that that's what it was.
And, I mean, we're late enough in the pack that this is not where you're picking up all-stars for your deck right here. But I think Countermand, a relevant hate draft for Dezani. Lots of expensive spells we've seen. Counter Magic actually pretty effective against him.
All right, so he get to take a look at his first pack here. We see that Banishing Light is the only real white card that he has, and it's going to be splashed here, but he's got double font, and he's also got Market Festival, so he's got a lot of fixing if he wants it. He's got Golden Hind for just sort of brute force ramping. His top end seems completely taken care of. I don't think he really needs to worry about taking anything else. He's got double Humbler of Mortals. He has the Golden Hide Ox. He's got the Great Revel. Like he's got that in spades. He really needs to find more ways to ramp, more removal, and more stuff to just do in the early stages of the game.
I think that's exactly what he wants. I think you're absolutely spot on with the removal element of what he has. His ramp is reasonably good right now. I mean, he's got several ways to interact on the second turn of the game, powering out that Eidolon of Blossoms. What I think is going to happen, the way I think he could potentially lose and what he has to account for in the second and third packs, is just ways of interacting with his opponent's creatures that are going to be attacking him while he's accelerating that mana. Once he gets to the late game, his spells are going to be more powerful than his opponents.
All right, we move into the Born of the Gods pack, and he's got a few cards pulled to the front. He's got Kiora's Follower, another great ramp spell. What else does he have there? He's got a Nyxborn Wolf, a
Swordwise Centaur.
A Swordwise Centaur seem to be the ones that he's really looking at.
And, I mean, Kiora's Follower, exactly what his deck wants to do if he can cast it.
Yeah.
But with red cards and a Banishing Light, moving into blue means that you're going to lose out on something, and that's a pretty big cost.
But he decides that Kiora's Follower is where he wants to go. I mean, it was the best card for in that pack, and he's going to go for power level here and maybe move over a little bit. He's still not completely solidified. He knows he's green. That's a given. But the rest of the colors he can kind of figure out as he goes here. Let's see what this next pick is. These next couple of picks are really going to dictate where he wants to go.
And that is
Fall of the Hammer is what he's pulled to the front, and I think that's what he's going to... Wow, he got past an Eidolon of Countless Battles, but it feels like the white ship has sailed.
Well, I mean, but when you get past an Eidolon of Countless Battles, I mean, that card is one of the best cards in the entire set. It goes well with your enchantment theme. It goes well with Banishing Light. I think you take Kiora's Follower, you're saying, okay, I'm going to flirt with blue, but when you get past Eidolon, you know that white is open. That is one of the loudest signals you can receive. And I think what he's doing is saying, okay, A, I have 2 fonts, so I'll be able to play some of these red cards regardless, and B, white is going to be coming to me in this pack.
So Dezani looks at his next pack. He's got Elite Skirmisher, Snake of the Golden Grove, a nice fixer with Temple of Plenty. There's also an Oresco Sun Guide hiding in the pack there. So a lot of options, but Jeremy's going to have to decide where he wants to go Like, he just picked a blue card with no blue cards and then a double white card with only one other white card. He's got double red in his pile, a bunch of green. He's really going to have to sort of buckle down here and figure out what his deck's trying to do.
And with that pick of the Sun Guide, it looks like he's trying to move into a little bit more, I think, traditional of a just, green-white, medium aggressive deck with, removal, good constellation value cards. The Temple, I would have been really tempted by, but I think he's seeing a lot of powerful white aggressive cards coming to him.
Yeah, so he sees a Crone Conscriptor pulled to the front, a very powerful card. Doesn't seem to fit his deck's theme too well currently. He doesn't have a lot of combat tricks, but he's going to pick it up here. It's a 5-drop that can absolutely take over the game.
And again, one of the most powerful cards in the set, one of the most powerful cards you could get past you. And again, you have to think of that as a signal for red. On the other hand, he has moved in a lot of different directions right now, and cards like Conscriptor require some help to really be as powerful as they can be. But
wow, this pack's insane too. There's a Forge Stoker Dragon, a Bolt of Keranos, and a Fall of the Hammer. The red is absolutely open here in pack 2, and he's going to take the bomb and take the Forge Stoker Dragon. That's an interesting pickup there. He could have taken the Fall of the Hammer and kept with the splash idea with maybe green-white splash red, but he took a bomb, a 5/4 flyer with a relevant activated ability as well. Clearly valuing power over anything else.
Well, and his deck is really well set up to be able to cast bombs like that with all his mana acceleration. I mean, this is where we see, I think, the value of remaining comparatively open. I mean, 4th pick Forge Stoker Dragon in a pack with tons of red cards. I mean, that's something you almost never see.
All right, he's going to take a Crowan Phalanx here. And, I mean, is he moving into red-white? Like, is that what's happening here? He hasn't taken... He took Kiora's Follower, and he's kind of moved off here.
Well, I think what you're thinking about if you're designing right now is just Naya. You have 3 cards that fix your colors and accelerate your mana right now, so I think you can pull off base green 2 splashes, or really largely evenly 3 color, but with your green fixing your mana early relatively easily, and I think that's kind of what he's doing here.
All right, he's going to take a Satyr Nick Smith, keeping with the red theme here in pack 2. A solid inspired creature that, if played on turn 3, could really start to take over the game pretty quickly. If you can back it up with a combat trick, start making 3/1s. Remember, those stay on the battlefield. Those aren't the kind that go away. All right, doesn't look like there's a ton. No, I take it back. There's another Crowan Phalanx there for Jeremy Dezani. He pulls that up to the front. And this is just interesting. The people to his left are not in white at all, which makes a lot of sense. In the first pack, Jeremy saw very little white. He took pack 1, pick 1, Banishing Light, and there wasn't really much left for him. I think in the third pack, we're not going to be seeing much white coming to Jeremy Dezani, at least once we get a couple of picks in.
I agree. I think this is one of those cases where you get your green in the first pack, you get your white and some of that red in the second, and then I think he's going to be picking up his, Voyaging Satyrs, his Nessian Asps out of Theros.
Okay, he takes the Cyclops of One-Eyed Pass here. Just sort of filling out the curve. This is the later part of the pack. Now, there is a chance he gets something kind of ridiculous back, though. He's passed some packs that were fairly stacked up, though. It would have to be extremely late. So we'll hang in here and see. You take a look at Jeremy, currently ranked #1 in our top 25 pro rankings. That is the #1 ranked Magic player in the world right there.
I think you're actually pretty happy with that Revoke existence that late. I'm usually pretty fine with playing 1-ish enchantment removal spell in the main deck.
All right, I think he's going to pick up either a second Revoke or a Scouring Sands here. I'm really curious to see where Jeremy wants to take this deck, though, because it is a little all over the map here. Like, I'm not 100% comfortable. Like, I think what you said is true. He's probably thinking Naya, but, he's got some double red cards. He's got some pretty mana-intensive stuff.
And I think what you said is right, too. I mean, he could just abandon the green. He's taken all red and white cards out of this pack with some reasonably aggressive, a reasonably aggressive curve to a Crowan Phalanx. When you are able to activate that card, it is very, very good.
That card is absolutely bonkers when you can start dumping 6 mana a turn into it and attacking it with your whole team. It's weird because the base on Born of the Gods, he's just red-white aggressive, just an archetype that we're used to seeing.
Well, he's red-white, but his curve without the green cards is very, very poor. That's the cards that he's able to cast early on the first, second, third turns of the game. So I think you need the green just to make sure that you can actually cast all these 4, 5, and 6 drops before you just get run over by whatever your opponent's doing.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this third pack goes for Jeremy. And it looks like he's just about ready to take a look now. We're moving into the Theros portion. This is the big set, and this is, of course, the set that people generally tend to know the best after having drafted it every step of the way through the block here.
One of the things about that, though, is that the card valuations definitely change in a format that's slowed down a little bit. I think it's easy to get tripped up on cards that may not be as good anymore as they used to be.
Yeah, speaking of tripped up, this is not a great pack for Jeremy. He sees a Satyr Hedonist, Nylea's Disciple. I think there's an Abhorrent Overlord at the back of the pack, but he's not even looking at that. And I think he's going to take a Nylea's Disciple out of this pack. He could take the Rage of Perforos if he wanted as well, but
yeah, I think
here's a double green spell. Like, this mana is starting to look a little shaky here.
I mean, if you're going to be base green, which I think we were talking about, Disciple is what you expect to be your main color anyway. You're not going to give up the Eidolon Blossom, so I think you're already prepared to cast 4 mana double green 4-drops, but you're never excited to be first picking Nylea's Disciple.
Exactly. There's a Time to Feed that Jeremy's pulled over and a Nylea's Emissary. So a couple of reasonable choices. There's also a God's Willing in that pack, which is of interest, though I think Nylea's Emissary is what Jeremy really has his eye on here.
Yeah, frankly, you almost have to be looking at that Opaline Unicorn, but I mean, you're not really excited to be taking that early. It's probably not a realistic pick. You can table it.
It's true, but I mean, I think that you mentioning that is pertinent here, Zach, because his mana is... it's a concern right now, right? I mean, he's not going to be able to just run all of his good stuff. He's going to have to be a little bit selective about which 2 colors and then which splashes he ends up running here. I'll be curious to see if he goes for what you said, which is like the base green double splash, or if he's like green, red, splash white, something along those lines.
And I think a lot of that just depends on what's in the remainder of this pack.
So there's a Nessian Courser that he's pulled to the front. And this entire Theros pack has been pretty unexciting here for Jeremy. We haven't seen the Nessian Asp and the Voyaging Satyrs that you mentioned. He's just sort of picked up, Nessian Courser, Nylea's Disciple. These aren't bad Magic cards. You're happy to have them in your deck, but these aren't the kind of things you want to be picking in pick 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dezani's deck and whether he's able to win his matches is going to be tremendously dependent on whether he gets a Font or a Golden Hind early. That said, Courser does give it an angle where he just casts a 3-drop on turn 3, a 3-drop on, or a 3-power creature on turn 4. Leaf Crown Dryad helps this too. He's got not a bad beatdown plan, and Nemesis of Mortals very late here.
Yeah, late Nemesis of Mortals. There's also an Anger of the Gods in this pack. I kind of like the Leaf Crown Dryad here myself. Like, he needs a few more things to do early, and it gives him something to do late as well. Wow, he's going to go for Anger of the Gods. So, Jeremy... we mentioned that this format has slowed down a bit since the Journey into Nyx came out, and it feels like Jeremy might be playing into that and, being a little greedy with his colors, but feeling like he can get away with it. All right, he finds an Observant Alseid. There's also a Nylea's Presence. Now, does he just have to bite the bullet and take the Presence here, Zach?
If it were me, I would be taking Nylea's Presence. I mean, you've already got a lot of card power, and you just want to make sure you cast your spells, especially with Anger of the Gods. You're basically saying, I'm going to play an enchantment-based mana accelerant, and I'm going to make up the tempo that I lose by doing that, by just by clearing all the creatures off the board with Anger of the Gods. So I think Presence plays right into that because it makes it a lot easier to cast Anger on time with just one natural red source.
All right, so it looks like he's got a couple of other mana fixers here, though. He's got another Nylea's Presence that he can take, or he can take a Traveler's Amulet if you'd rather have it colorless. Interestingly, goes for the Amulet here. I really thought he was going to take the Nylea's Presence, given that it's a easy fixer, it's a cantrip, and it also works with his Eidolon Blossoms.
It works great with Eidolon Blossoms, and it works great with Nylea's Disciple, gaining him an extra life.
Yeah, so that was an interesting choice there for Jeremy to take the Amulet. It is cheaper, it is easier to cast just in case, but he is base green. I mean, if he does have to plan on having green every time he plays.
I think so, but I see the point of the wafer, or what is it? Wafer's bomb. What variant of
It's
this
called
is
Traveler's
this?
Amulet.
Traveler's Amulet. I see the point of that though, because you know, if you draw a hand that's just plains and mountains, you want to make sure you can play a game of Magic, and the amulet makes sure you can do that.
All right, Destructive Revelry for Jeremy.
And that's something you can play instead of Revoke Existence. It's instant speed, it gets artifacts, it deals 2 damage, you can cast it. So I could see that making his deck pretty realistically. Still, like you were saying, though, just not a lot of the green cards you really want to see out of Theros.
Here's another green card that you kind of don't really want to see with Satyr Hedonist, though it actually seems pretty reasonable in this deck.
I definitely think that Hedonist does a lot of work for him. I mean, A, it's an early drop, it can trade. B, it makes his beatdown draws better. C, you know, you have a lot of 6 and 7 drops that are so good that they're almost worth ritualing out.
Forge Stoker Dragon, Humbler of Mortals, like all of these things coming down a couple of turns earlier are kind of insane.
Yeah, exactly.
He picks up a Ray of Dissolution here, sideboard card for him here. Here's another sideboard card with Fade into Antiquity.
And Dezani himself just has a lot of enchantment creatures, so being able to hate draft these enchantment kill spells actually probably really good for Dezani. You do not want to get your 6-drop blown up by Fade into Antiquity. Yeah,
Setessan Griffin. And he's just picking up those last few cards out of the pack. So this was an interesting draft to watch for me because he really pushed the boundaries a bit as far as colors go. I mean, he was clearly taking what he thought was the most powerful option and not really paying a lot of mind to, well, can I cast this right now? You know, he was really prioritizing power level over consistency here, and I'm really curious to see what his deck ends up looking like. You know, because in the early part of the packs, it looked like he was base green, a ramp deck, a constellation deck was kind of where it was going. If you did a snapshot of his draft, just looking at pack 2, he's red-white aggro.
Right.
Like he didn't touch green. That wasn't even on the map for him.
Right. I mean, I would say he's more like red-white mid-range
Sure,
if you
that's
look
fair.
at the second pack, which I think is important because what you can say is, you know, the cards that he got were not like aggressive, heroic cards. I mean, he played cards that can go into a base green deck relatively reasonably. So, I mean, I definitely see how his deck can come together. I think I actually kind of like his deck, but you're right that it is not the intuitive, like, start out with one thing in the first pack and just ride that all the way to the end of the draft. I mean, you know, even with the Kiora's follower pick, you know, we see him being willing to switch things up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, you know, looking at his draft, I wonder if he was a little too willing. You know, like he's definitely stretched the boundaries here. And like you said, you kind of like the deck. I'm a little more towards the other end of it. Now, I want to see the build, right? Sure. I got to see what this thing looks like. But, you know, he picked up 2 Akron Phalanx. Really strong card. But if I'm base green and I'm splashing for that and then maybe sometimes the ability, like I'm okay with that. You know, if I'm green-white and I can maybe activate the ability, I'm great with that too. But, you know, there are 2 different colors of mana symbols on that thing. And he's got, like, if we're going to go into red, Forge Stoker Dragon's a pretty big pull.
Oh, I think he's absolute. I think I would be extremely surprised if he was not Naya. I think you've got.
I think you're right.
I think he's got 5 color fixers. So at that point, you know, your green can basically turn at a relatively liquid way into both red and white mana. I think that you have to play. I mean, the way you're going to win is by playing all your powerful cards. You know, that's what you're ramping to. Otherwise, you just, you know, get a bunch of lands out and don't do anything with it. So I think that's what we're going to see. But I agree with you. I mean, his 4 slot is stacked. He's got Nylea's Emissary, I believe. He's got Centaur. He's got 2 Akroan Phalanx. He has Eidolon of Blossoms.
He has Nylea's Disciple.
Nylea's Disciple.
He has Market Festival. Like, he's got it all at 4.
And you're not going to be able to just cast that many 4-drops in a single game. You're going to have to cut somewhere. All
right, so an interesting draft there from #1 player in the world, Jeremy Dezani. I'm going to run out and try to get a look at what that build looks like. I'm curious because there's a lot of directions he can go. But for now, we're going to send it back to the news desk where Rich, BDM, and Randy await, and they're going to bring you more draft.
Rich, can you give us some audio?
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the news desk. Rich, BDM, Randy Bueller. one of us is hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. I'm not sure which of the three wise monkeys we are.
I'm clearly not speak no evil.
That's true story. Very, very true. All right, so we've got lots to bring you in the 30, 35 minutes or so while the players build their decks. But first things first, I know you guys were glued to the screen through all of that. So what was going on there, Randy? Take it away. Talk to us.
Yeah, it was a tough seat. I mean, he wound up with a 3-color deck. I would have had a 4th color in my deck. I would have taken Fleet Feather Cockatrice in the first pack, and then I don't know what happens from there.
Yeah, Fleet Feathers. I mean, it was obviously green was obviously something pretty strong.
Right.
You have Golden Hind as your top green common.
I do. I think Golden Hind is better
So
green
a
common.
3rd pick Golden Hind or 2nd pick Golden
He was
Hind.
absolutely right to move into green.
Yeah.
But then what does he pair it with? He could have been green-white. I mean, he got the Banishing Light early, so the Eidolon becomes, it's an enchantment, and, green-white accumulating a bunch of
And he
enchantments.
got past the Eidolon too, yeah.
Right, he got past Eidolon at Blossom. So that part's easy. It's just where do you go once you've got, like, Eidolon Banishing Light.
And Fleet Feather
Fleet
Cockatrice is
Feather-
a huge signal. That's, again, top uncommon.
Right, and he
one of
wound
the top
up.
uncommons.
It's so good, and then he wound up with the Kiora's follower anyway. Like I assume he's not playing the blue,
Right.
And he's sort of Naya colored because then he got past the pack with the dragon and the bolt and it was a crazy seat.
Right. Basically, he had 4 colors to pick from.
Four
And
colors, pick 2 or 3. I think he'll wind up with 3.
And then when he got to the last pack, there was a black bomb, which
Right,
was like
he
the
shipped a
one
Grey
color he
Merchant,
couldn't,
shipped an Aboran Overlord.
yeah.
All right, well, Jeremy Dezani is the number ranked player in the world right now. Why don't we take a look at the top 25, and we're going to work our way through them and give you a sense of how they got to these positions of power, if you will, and more importantly, what it all means. So let's look at the top 25 up on the board. There you see them already, from Raf Levy at 25 up to Jeremy Dezani at 1. But Randy, being number 6 in the world, great accomplishment.
Sure.
But what's it actually going to mean? So let's start looking at the World Championship, because this is what it all comes down to. So let's move on and take a look at, first of all, what positions at the World Championship are already locked. Let's take a look at those. See who's already locked into the World Championships right now.
And Worlds really is the ultimate tournament that all these guys want to qualify. I mean, it's one thing to qualify for the Pro Tour, and it's nice to qualify for the Pro Tour, but you look at the top 25 rankings, and sure, you want the invites, you want the platinum status, you want the gold status, but that seat at Worlds is the ultimate tournament. There's only 24 spots at Worlds. If the season was ending right now, we can look at who those 24 would be, and then we can follow it over the course of the next couple events. Who's going to have a seat when the music stops?
All right, let's find out. So locked already. Let's move on to see who is going to be coming to the big show. And you start, well, here we go. These 5.
Yeah, we know 5 of the 24. 2013 World Champ, Shahar Shenhar gets to come back and defend his title. Raphael Levy was the captain of the French team that won the World Magic Cup. He gets a seat. And then winning a Pro Tour, one of the benefits of winning a Pro Tour is that you get to go to Worlds. So we know we'll have Dezani, we know we'll have Sean McLaren, and we also know we're going to have Lars Dam. He won the Magic Online Championships a couple of months ago.
Yeah, he's a real dark horse because we often see a pace setter at an event, and you were both at that event.
Yeah.
And so often you see the guy who's 10-1, 12-0. They get to the top 4, the top 8, and then it's like, no, lose 2-0, done. Not Lars Dam.
Also worth noting about Lars Dam that he has a match win percentage on Magic Online in MOX events that rivals Jeremy Dezani's, right? It's close to 70%. I think it was like 69% in MOX events.
Yeah, he's good, for
so
sure.
A very, very gaudy number. This is a guy who knows how to play Magic, and he's like, fine, I'll start going to a bunch of Pro Tours. I've got gold now, as part of winning the Magic Online Championship. So he's qualified throughout next year, so we're going to see a lot more of him.
So those are the 5 locked in. Now we have some titles still to be determined.
Yep.
Let's take a look at those. And we'll show you what slots are still open in the to be determined bracket. So,
Player of the Year gets you a spot at Worlds if you don't already have one. Well, currently Jeremy Dezani is leading the Player of the Year race, already has a spot because he won Pro Tour Theros. So that spot actually passes down and creates an additional invite on the at-large list. So Dezani, if somebody else wins Player of the Year, like if Reed Duke passes him without winning a PT, then this spot would go to the Player of the Year. So there's a pass-down thing that we have to keep an eye on. Rookie of the Year, Jared Butcher is currently leading that race. He got 9th at the last PT with his Ad Nauseam deck. He's had success on the Grand Prix circuit. He's got a couple-point lead in the Rookie of the Year race. And then meanwhile, somebody's going to win this Pro Tour, somebody's going to win in Portland. If those guys will be at Worlds,
You sound
guaranteed.
pretty sure of that.
I am pretty sure. You know, we've had a day one canceled. We've never had an entire Pro Tour fail to result in a winner.
Yes,
Knock wood.
Yeah, indeed. All right, let's move on because now we get into the world of the geo regions, which all sounds terribly posh, but basically means parts of the world. BDM, talk us through.
Well, so Shi Tian Li, who just was in the top 8 of our last Pro Tour, is leading in the Asia Pacific. Jingwei Zhang also there. So we have Jun Young Park off by a point.
Yeah, Jun Young Park, by the way, you talk about the impact of Grand Prix. He won Grand Prix Minneapolis last weekend, and he's now 1 point away from going to Worlds.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
It's pretty interesting.
They're really big deals. As for Europe, Dezani, of course, is up front there, as he would be at number 1. And then SHUHEI Shenha, who splits his time between the United States and Israel. He is in the blue and white of Israel right now, the number 6 ranked player in the world. So he would currently make it there.
Except that, again, both those guys already have locked-in slots.
Yep, right.
So these are 2 more slots that would go into the pass-down category for the at-large bids.
And those at-large bids, there's a lot of top 25 players are getting super interested in those. All right, what about Japan? Who have we got there, Randy? Kentaro Yamamoto, Shuhei Nakamura.
Yeah, with Watanabe just 1 point behind Shuhei.
Yeah, now that's a fearsome guy to have just 1 point behind you. That really is look over your shoulder time.
And Kentaro Yamamoto, just to remember, like, the reason everyone's playing Pack Rat in Standard,
It's his fault.
That's his fault. Yeah, people are like playtesting his deck from the Pro Tour Theros that had 2 Pack Rats in it, and they're like, I've never won a game where my opponent played one of these Pack Rats. Maybe we should play 4 of these.
What's that Japanese word for honorable suicide? Is it seppuku or something? I'm amazed he's still alive after that. All right, let's move on and see where else in the world players are going to come from. Well, right now, Latin America gives you Willy Edel and Paula Vita Dama de Rosa, who are pretty much by consensus the best 2 players to ever come out of Brazil, I think it's fair to say. Sorry, Carlos Romao, but
fair.
I think that's probably pretty fair. And then North America, well, again, 2 star-studded names, Reid Duke and Owen Turtenwald. And we forget so quickly, we're so fickle. But Owen Turtenwald won back-to-back GPs and was a round away from making it 3 top 8s in 3 weeks.
Right, yeah. And he is pressed right up against the GP cap. So, we need to see him get a second top 8 to really, if he wants to put some distance between anyone. There may be some room for some people to catch him.
We talk about that GP cap from time to time, just so people know what we're talking about. Only 5 Grand Prix worth of results are allowed to count toward your season status. So whatever your 5 best GPs are, those count toward these points that we're talking about. And I really like the way that tweak to the rules this year means that the Pro Tour Player of the Year comes down to the Pro Tour.
It is definitely going to come down to these last 2 events are going to really determine who wins that.
Yeah, this is moving day.
So
this is moving day today.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at where the at-large bids stand
These are the
right
fun
now.
ones.
Here we go. So the at-large, these are the next people down the chain. We'll see.
Yeah, so there's guaranteed to be at least 5 at-large invitations, but based on where things are at right now, we're +3 on pass down, so it's 8 people getting in. Sam Black, Josh McClain, Ben Stark, Alexander Hayne, Jacob Wilson, Billy Jensen. Patrick Dickman got onto this list by putting up a top 16 in Minneapolis last weekend, which also got him gold and an appearance fee, so a nice little level up moment for him. And then YUUYA Watanabe is actually in on tiebreakers over Tom Martell. They're both sitting on 34 points.
Okay, let's show you who's just on the outside looking in, the other at-large players who are most in the mix. There they are.
Yeah,
You
I
see
love this
5
as,
names there.
it's like the bubble. It's like, if you watch NCAA basketball in America, these guys are right on the edge knocking in. Martell's off on tiebreakers right now. Reitzel and Sifka, who picked up points at the GP last weekend, are just a point off. And then Dejan and Zadokai.
So what we're going to do is we're going to show you very briefly how the top 10 got to their top 10 positions. So let's just wade through our top 25. 21 to 25, first of all. Let's take a look at the likes of Raf Levy, who's going to be at 25. William Jensen, 24. Fennell, 23. Froelich, 22. Kentaro Yamamoto at 21. On we go. 20 to 16. It's Ochoa, Reitzel, Maher, McClain, and Wilson. 15 down to 11 looks like this. Next up, Willy Edel, Stanislav Sifka, Josh Utter-Layton, Alexander Hayne, and Sean McLaren. And so that brings us to our top 10. So here's Li Shi-chan of Hong Kong. Let's take a look at his season. BDM.
Well, he picked up 3 points at Pro Tour Theros. 20 points at Pro Tour Born of the Gods. It was his second Pro Tour top 8, and then he's got a handful of Grand Prix with solid finishes.
Okay, let's move on to number 9, and this is Shuhei. Let's take a look at his season, Randy.
Yeah, Platinum Pro, trying to get back to Platinum again, needs about 10 more points to get it, probably will. This is just a solid season from a player who always puts up solid results.
But no big Pro Tour finish for him yet this year.
No, he hasn't had that big Pro Tour finish. He would certainly like to have that. That's probably going to need that to if he does want to get back to Platinum.
Here's YUUYA Watanabe, Player of the Year, former player. Let's see his results. There you see it. He's got Grand Prix results still in the tank. Let's move to number 7. And 7 is Tom Martell. There you see him, 34 points already this season. And Randy, 10 points from Born of the Gods. Those are 10 points he did not look like getting when he was 5-3 overnight.
No, he made a nice run there, absolutely.
Number 6, let's take a look. It's SHUHEI, your reigning world champion. What does his season look like so far? BDM, tons of Grand Prix finishes there.
Yeah, tons of Grand Prix finishes. Not a lot of Pro Tour finishes, but also contributing to his run here is the World Championship, which is notably absent from his point total.
Yeah, a lot of the top 10 players have points from Worlds. They're really crucial. If you manage to play the World Championships, it makes it a lot easier to get back to Platinum and get back to Worlds the next year.
It's like a performance-enhancing drug for your status for the following season.
Fair.
There you see Sam Black. Let's take a look at his season for you. And they're highlighted by Grand Prix Washington, D.C. Top 8, of course, of Theros. Number 4, on we go as we head through our top 10. It's Ben Stark. What does his season look like? 40 points already. Top 8s are plenty. Dallas, Fort Worth, Detroit, and on we go.
Again, a top 4 at Worlds is a big part of his...
Where most of his points are coming
a
from.
big part of his year.
Owen Turtenwald is currently at number 3. And as we've already mentioned, you see the 8 points there. Grand Prix, you see his scores. Let's move on and take a look at REID Duke there. So he is your number 2. Can he go all the way? We see a Grand Prix Miami winner, 2nd place at Detroit. And your number 1, of course, is Jeremy Dezani.
He's just had a ridiculous year.
Yeah, let's just take a look. There you go, 6, 5, 5, 4, and 3 at the Grand Prix.
40 points in 2 Pro Tours.
Not bad.
Pretty good.
Just crazy stuff. So that's the top 25. We've already seen Jeremy Dezani draft. You guys, get out of here. I've got something else for you to do. Okay. Because I'm delighted to say that while Jeremy Dezani was drafting, we were able to show you Willy Edel drafting as well at the same table. So I'm sending the guys over to the wall. They're going to see it back. We haven't seen what Edel's done. We're seeing it for the first time, just like you are. So for the first time here at Pro Tour Journey into Nyx, it's time to go inside the draft with Willy Edel.